Hey everyone, my name is Drew. I am an author of literary fiction. I've written three novels. This one called Storyteller, this one called IPA, like the beer, and this one called Each One a Nation. In addition to writing independent literary fiction, I am a special ed educator in Florida. I teach English in a middle school environment for EBD kids, emotional behavioral disorder. And that job requires quite a bit of tenacity, quite a bit of dedication, and it comes with quite a bit of an emotional toll. And I'd like to be clear on that. I what we do at in the EBD classroom, we're not on the ground in Baghdad. Okay, we're not getting shot at. We're not saving people from fires. But we are working with kids who have a really hard time regulating their emotions. So we see kids struggle every day. And there's a lot of sadness that comes with that. A lot of these kids have been let down by adults in their lives. Some of them haven't. Some of them have wonderful parents, wonderful guardians, great lives. But we see a lot of people struggling with themselves. And so it's important for me as a teacher to have something to come home to be able to focus on and keep my mind on while I'm away from that. And for me, writing fiction has really been that for me. Just as a reader, you would disappear into a world, I get to disappear into the world that I'm creating on the page. That's been really important to me in trying to balance out my job. For example, in this book, Each One a Nation, one of the things I really wanted to look at was how young people react to being pitted against one another, especially when they've known each other for a long time. This book is not about an EBD environment. This is about a super wealthy, very privileged set of kids. And they are reaching an age where things are going to have to start being earned against one another. They're going to have to start competing for certain levels of status, certain levels of achievement, scholarships, places in a university. And that creates a dynamic between their families that is way different than what they have had throughout most of their childhood with each other. So I get to come home at the end of the day and focus on that instead of these kids that are heading down a really, really bad path. And that's been super gratifying for me. The reason I write literary fiction specifically is because it is getting to the bottom of humanity. It is more philosophical, it is more psychological than genre fiction. Genre fiction is a wonderful thing. It creates worlds where people can escape to. It creates markets where authors can make a ton of money writing 25 book series on some science fiction universe that they've created. What I appreciate about literary fiction, though, is that the readers that I have, the people who are going to talk to me about what I have written, are really, really interested in having a conversation about the human elements of what I've written about. That's really gratifying for me. I have really, really smart readers um, who want to talk about these big ideas and who want to sort of chew on high concept for a while, who are okay with being challenged, who are okay with plot lines that maybe don't make sense until they've gotten later on in the book, or until they've read the book a second time. Um, and that's nothing against genre fiction writers or their readers. Um, in my world, in my brain, anybody who's taking the time to read instead of choosing maybe an easier form of entertainment, I am really happy about that. Um, but the ones who are willing to still read literary fiction, which has become harder and harder to market, so much so that I don't say I don't necessarily market anymore. When I first started doing this, I thought I could go out and find that audience, and I've learned that it is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Um, so much so now that I pretty much have settled on the fact that, I'm going to have my 60 or so readers, and I'm going to write a book for me and give it to them and see what they think about it. I pretty much own all of my process. I don't use AI for anything. I don't plan with AI. I do not edit with AI. My cover art is made by humans. From the beginning to the end, this is an entirely human process, and it will stay that way forever. Um, I will not do this any other way. I refuse to do this any other way. Um, from the second I start typing to the second the book arrives from Amazon, um, there is no artificially generated content in this book or any of my books. Um, and that's very gratifying for me. Um, in terms of how that plays into my teaching, I'm trying to teach young people how to write, and they're very resistant to this. Most of my students, when I first get them, will refuse to even write a sentence about themselves. Not asking them to use a text, not asking them to even use periods, even use capital letters. Getting one sentence about themselves down on a page is such an ask for them emotionally that they will often just refuse to do it. Which is why it's so gratifying to eventually get to the end of the year where they're writing paragraphs. They're using proper punctuation. They're trying to use proper spelling. They're asking me, how do you spell this word? They're asking me, what punctuation do I use at the end of this sentence? And I get to alternate between these two worlds, between the high concept literary folks and these very, very beginner level students. And that creates this very robust life for me, where I am running the whole gambit of literacy, of human communication, of understanding. I get to go all the way from, this is how we work on phonics. This is what sound this letter produces, all the way up to, what lens are we viewing this text through? That is a wonderful, wonderful way to live, in my opinion. That is a life spent in the life of the mind. And if you're interested in more of that, The follow button is right down there.